The morning had begun like any other on Today with Jenna and Friends, with bright lights filling the studio and the audience buzzing with excitement as Jenna Hager welcomed her guest Kelly Clarkson to the stage. The crowd erupted in cheers as Kelly took her seat, smiling warmly and waving, but behind that easy smile was a tension no one expected to see play out live on air. Kelly had been juggling an overwhelming schedule, balancing her own talk show, music commitments and public appearances, and while she had agreed to join Jenna as a favor, the atmosphere quickly shifted when questions turned sharper than expected. Jenna began innocently enough, asking Kelly about her music, her tour, and her experiences as a host, but soon she leaned into a more direct line of questioning that touched on Kelly's personal struggles, including her highly publicized divorce and the pressures of raising children in the public eye. Kelly tried to brush it off with humor, but Jenna pressed again, this time with a tone that felt less like friendly curiosity and more like interrogation. The audience shifted uncomfortably, some clapping nervously, while others grew quiet, sensing the mood begin to sour as Kelly's smile tightened. The tension grew when Jenna remarked that Kelly sometimes seemed to play the victim in interviews, suggesting that perhaps Kelly leaned too heavily on her personal struggles to gain sympathy. Kelly's eyes widened and her body stiffened, visibly stunned that such a remark had been made live on television. She leaned forward and reminded Jenna that sharing her story was about connecting with people, not manipulating them. The room fell silent for a moment as Jenna laughed awkwardly, trying to soften her comment, but Kelly was no longer willing to play along with the banter. Kelly's voice grew stronger, more defiant, as she pushed back against the insinuation that she was exploiting her own hardships. She spoke with raw honesty about the reality of navigating heartbreak, fame, and motherhood in the public eye, her words cutting through the tension with an edge that even Jenna did not expect. The crowd applauded, but Jenna, sensing she was losing control of the moment, doubled down by asking if Kelly really thought constantly revisiting her struggles was healthy for her children. That was the question that tipped everything over the edge. Kelly's expression hardened and her patience evaporated. Kelly turned to Jenna with fire in her eyes and told her point-blank that as a mother she had every right to share her story in her own words and on her own terms. She insisted that no one, especially another woman, should try to shame her for speaking her truth. The audience gasped while Jenna attempted to defend herself, but the energy in the studio had shifted entirely. Kelly's anger was palpable, her voice unwavering, and the applause that followed her statement made clear that many in the audience sided with her rather than the host. Jenna tried to recover by laughing it off, telling the crowd that this was just a healthy debate, but Kelly was no longer interested in playing nice. She adjusted her chair, looked Jenna in the eye, and told her bluntly that she did not come on the show to be disrespected or reduced to headlines. The cameras captured every second as Kelly stood up, smoothing down her outfit and thanking the audience directly while ignoring Jenna completely. The audience roared in a mix of shock and support as the star made her way toward the backstage exit without hesitation. The producers scrambled frantically, trying to figure out what to do as Jenna sat frozen in her chair, her smile plastered but her face flushed with embarrassment. She attempted to joke that Kelly must have somewhere more important to be, but the damage was already done. Live television had just captured a talk show host storming off the set of another host's show, the kind of unscripted, explosive moment that no one could have predicted. Jenna looked toward the audience for reassurance, but the stunned silence that lingered spoke louder than any words. Backstage, Kelly's team tried to calm her down, but she was still seething, replaying Jenna's words in her head. She knew that walking out would create a media frenzy, but in that moment she felt it was necessary to reclaim her dignity. She told her team that she refused to be framed as weak or manipulative, especially not by another woman on live television. Meanwhile, the show continued awkwardly without her, Jenna struggling to fill the time with nervous chatter as the audience remained unsettled by what they had just witnessed. Within minutes, social media exploded. Clips of Kelly storming off went viral, spreading across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at lightning speed. Fans flooded comment sections praising her for standing up for herself, while critics argued about whether she had overreacted. Hashtags like Kelly Strong and Team Kelly began trending, while others mocked Jenna for crossing the line. It was clear the fallout was going to dominate headlines for days to come, turning a casual morning show segment into one of the most talked about moments of live television in years. By the end of the day, both women found themselves at the center of a media firestorm, Jenna issuing a vague statement about how live television can get heated and Kelly releasing her own heartfelt words about standing up for boundaries and respect. The clash became more than just an awkward TV moment. It became a cultural talking point about the treatment of women in the spotlight, authenticity versus performance, and the fine line between tough questions and outright disrespect. One thing was certain though, Kelly Clarkson's storming off would forever be remembered as a defining fiery moment in daytime television history. The fallout from the walkout did not cool overnight. Instead, it simmered and grew hotter by the hour. The headlines dominated morning news outlets, entertainment magazines, and digital feeds everywhere. Jenna Bush Hager awoke to a barrage of messages from producers, executives, and even friends asking what really happened on set. She tried to brush it off with laughter at first, insisting it had been a misunderstanding, but deep down she knew the confrontation had exposed a raw edge that could not simply be spun away. Kelly Clarkson had made a statement not just by speaking but by walking out, and Jenna could feel the sting of humiliation. By the time Jenna returned to the Today studio the next morning, the atmosphere was thick with expectation. Her co-hosts offered her sympathetic smiles and gentle prodding, but even they could not resist asking how she felt about Kelly leaving the set live on air. Jenna took a deep breath and tried to maintain composure, but her response was clipped. She told the audience she respected Kelly, but she also believed guests should be prepared for tough questions. Her attempt to frame herself as the professional did little to quiet the audience reaction, as many viewers saw it as a thinly veiled jab. Behind the scenes, producers worried the situation was spiraling out of their control. They urged Jenna to extend an olive branch to Kelly to ease the tensions and restore some public goodwill, but Jenna resisted, bristling at the idea of apologizing. She argued that she had not done anything wrong, that Kelly had overreacted, and that she had simply done her job as a host. The more they pressed her to smooth things over, the more she dug in her heels, determined to hold her ground even as the backlash outside the studio walls continued to grow louder. Meanwhile, Kelly Clarkson remained quiet for a day, letting the storm of commentary swirl online before she made her next move. When she finally spoke, it was not in an interview or a lengthy statement, but during her own talk show where she addressed the incident directly. She looked into the camera and explained that she would never apologize for standing up for herself or for demanding respect. She admitted walking out had been a bold move, but sometimes boldness was the only way to send a message. Her studio audience erupted in cheers and the clip quickly went viral. Kelly's words stung Jenna more than she wanted to admit, because they framed her as the aggressor and painted Kelly as the strong, empowered woman fighting against disrespect. The narrative began to tilt heavily in Kelly's favor, leaving Jenna in the awkward position of looking defensive. She had underestimated how fiercely fans would rally behind Kelly, who was beloved not just as a singer but as a relatable figure who had weathered pain in the public eye. Jenna's team urged her to release a carefully worded apology, but Jenna pushed back yet again, refusing to play into the role of the villain. Instead, Jenna chose to fight fire with fire. During her next show appearance, she looked straight into the camera and said she admired Kelly, but she believed the walkout had been unnecessary and disrespectful to the viewers. She argued that everyone in the spotlight faced uncomfortable questions and suggested that Kelly had failed to rise to the occasion. The comment drew gasps from her studio audience and sparked another firestorm online. Once again, Jenna had poured gasoline on the flames rather than put them out. The clash now took on a life of its own, spreading beyond morning television into late-night comedy segments, radio debates, and opinion pieces across media outlets. Some praised Kelly's bravery while others criticized her for being unprofessional. Likewise, Jenna gained some sympathy from those who argued she had simply done her job, but the overwhelming public sentiment tilted against her. Hashtags like "We Stand With Kelly" continued to trend, with fans demanding that Jenna apologize. It was no longer just about two women on a talk show. It had become a cultural conversation about power, respect, and female solidarity. As the week went on, the producers at Today grew increasingly anxious about the reputational risk and ratings impact of the feud. Though the controversy had brought massive attention to the show, it had also created a cloud over Jenna, who was now being painted as combative and insensitive. Whispers began circulating about whether higher-ups might pressure her to issue a formal apology or even take a brief leave of absence to allow the storm to to pass on and refused both options, her pride too wounded to back down. Kelly, on the other hand, leaned into the support, using her own platform to highlight broader conversations about respect in media. She invited guests to discuss how women in the industry were often judged more harshly, and she tied her walkout to a bigger theme of self-worth. Her episodes drew record audiences as fans tuned in not just for entertainment but for inspiration. The more she spoke, the more her narrative eclipsed Jenna's, leaving her rival floundering under the weight of criticism that showed no signs of letting up. By the end of the week, the feud had transformed from a single fiery confrontation into an all-out cultural moment. Kelly Clarkson storming off was no longer just a headline, it was a rallying point, and Jenna Hager found herself backed into a corner as the world debated her every word and gesture. The question looming now was whether the two women would ever confront each other again face-to-face on live television, or if the rift had grown too wide to be bridged. Whatever came next, audiences everywhere were watching closely, waiting for the next spark in a clash that had already shaken daytime television to its core.